Arcade racing games. The term arcade, signifying unrealistic driving characteristics like exaggerated drifting, a disregard towards braking zones, chaos, and bombast. But in current discourse, it's overlooked where the term comes from. Arcade, like actual arcades. There were a ton of racing games released exclusively through arcades, and while some heavy hitters are playable today, there's way more completely lost to history, which is bizarre, considering the games themselves are also kind of bizarre. Starting with Sega Race TV, the premise for this is that it takes place in an over-the-top game show, not unlike Sega's own Mad World, far less violent of course. The cast of characters are unmistakably Sega, and the car selection is all roadsters, but it's also the first appearance of the Plymouth Prowler I've ever seen in a game. Now if you just look at the track layouts, they seem kinda basic, but they're anything but. Laid down all across the track are two types of boost strips, one which charges your boost the longer you drive on it, which you can then engage manually, and another which launches your car forward instantly. Each lap, this game brings in a new challenge. One stage might have semis you need to dodge along a straight, another turns a section of the track into ice, and someone please call Chris Redfield for these boulders. Being an arcade racer, rubber banding is present, but unlike older Sega racers, collisions can actually work in your favor, effectively blocking the competition without losing speed or control of your car. But you still can't just ram opponents out of the way. Through the race, you get live commentary about positions, upcoming hazards, etc.
Turns like that go a lot smoother with a little drift, even better than expected.
But there's no variation to the voice lines, so you will be hearing the same lines often, but coupled with the music and the sheer amount that it's happening on screen, they do kinda just become white noise, so they're not too annoying. Winning a championship gets you a code for a better version of your car of choice, incentivizing repeat playthroughs, if you have the ability to enter the code. It's a fast-paced racing experience, exploding with style, that still requires learning these tracks, perfecting your boosts, and dealing with on-the-fly track hazards. It's well worth checking out, and while this wouldn't be the last racing game Sega produced, it would be the last one designed by Yu Suzuki, who if you don't know, is a pioneer of 3D graphics in gaming. Sega Race TV may not have reached the acclaim of Daytona or Virtua, but it's a great final outing, at that same high level of quality and fun that Suzuki and AM2 are known to deliver. Now that's all well and good, but how about a game that never got its time to shine?
KO Drive.
Announced in 2012 before being cancelled without so much as an acknowledgement, but having now played it and experienced all of its content, I can't see why. If Sega Race TV was cocaine, then KO Drive is cocaine Kiwami. What is even happening? KO brings weapons into the mix, with some striking transformations representing each power-up, all of which get a new variation the more you upgrade your car. Now how do you get these upgrades? Just collect points containers along the track. Nice and simple. There are only 3 cars, but multiple characters bring their own livery. None of these characters have any voice lines or performance difference. The tracks are of course Sega style, and take some practice to get the fastest times and to memorize the hazard, like this pillar dastardly put after a jump, and this square right being the first turn on one of the Egyptian courses. And at first glance, you'd think you're spoiled for choice on tracks, but look closely and you'll see there's actually only 2 layouts per location, just with normal and reversed options. But what makes this gameplay so chaotic is how the items work. You cannot hold on to any of them, but the traps, weirdly enough. They will be activated whether you like it or not. I never felt that this was a negative, since you are always getting a new power-up. There isn't any real strategy to the power-ups, which would be a larger negative than it is if the AI still weren't a bit of a challenge. They're not the toughest, being that they're unfinished, but you still can't play this mindlessly. KO has one last trick up its sleeve, with a bonus stage where you must destroy as many weaponized trucks within a time limit. Though this mode is so unfinished. There's not enough power-ups to do damage fast enough, and these trucks simultaneously go too slow and too fast. It's like a tailing mission. Not a strong suit of the game, and apart from some of the VFX and UI issues, KO Drive is overall a solid arcade racer that blends intensity with challenge, and it's a shame the game was never refined for release, because what's here now is damn good already. Now, if you thought a game that never released wasn't obscure enough, well, I raise you Techno Drive. I ask again, what is going on here? Well, basically, your mission is to get your driver's license while tripping on LSD, which is hard enough, but doubly so when you have input lag. Unfortunately, I had emulation issues with this game. For example, this was me fighting the main menu to select the second to last event. And no, it's not stick drift because I was using a keyboard. But the game is just so enticing, I soldiered on, poorly, to do all the challenges. Your first set of missions are either braking or steering challenges. It's random whenever you start up the game. They are varied from basic cone challenges to Rocket League and others, including this mode where you have to avoid moving forward under the watch of the all-seeing eye, lest you be electrocuted. Finally, it all comes together where you have to put both to the test, and I tried my damnedest to fight with the emulator, but I don't think I'm getting the license. Techno Drive is a game I wish I could play properly. It is effectively a minigame collection, but the games here are good, and I can die happy tomorrow, now knowing the inspiration for Most Wanted 2012's cutscenes. You cannot talk about weird racing games without mentioning Thrill Drive, the infamous horror racer which inspired Burnout. But I gotta say, the legend of Thrill Drive is larger than the reality. It's really not that spooky. The whole gimmick of this game is that when the race starts, it's this bright and energetic romp, cutting through traffic and outrunning the police. But the second you crash, the skies go gray, the storm rolls in, and the music tells you you did a bad thing. The problem is, this illusion is immediately shattered when you complete the race, and the game tells you, yeah, you're a great driver, and gives you a high rank. Like, okay, clearly vehicular manslaughter isn't actually that bad. As for the racing itself, it is fun narrowly avoiding cars and trying to keep yourself in control over crests and dips, but that's not exclusive to Thrill Drive. A lot of games can provide this. There really is no actual punishment for crashing. The police don't become more aggressive or send in more units. In fact, the only negative is the same as any other game, in that you just run out of time if you crash too much. Thrill Drive has one gimmick, and in my opinion, does the bare minimum with its execution, and I think the developers would agree, because future entries ditch the horror twist. The legacy of Thrill Drive is important, because it led to the creation of one of the genre's greats. But you know what they say, never meet your heroes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. Accident.
Emergency Call Ambulance speaks for itself. Sega has a little history with eccentric takes on EMS, with ECA being no different. One thing is clear from my time with this game, and that's that at 8 quarters, it demands perfection from you. Lives are on the line, and there is no margin for error. Every hit harms your patient and knocks time off their life expectancy. But this is apparently the most dangerous city in the world. I think we need some more ambulance drivers. You're gonna get very familiar with the hazards in these stages, because when, not if, you fail, you can't just replay the stage you failed. You have to replay the whole game. Positive side to this? You get really good at the first couple of stages. The negative is that it makes failure all the more painful. Like, come on, how is this my fault? It really is the Dark Souls of racing games, though it released in 1999, so perhaps the more accurate phrase would be, it's the Tenchu of racing games. Nevertheless, it's an experience well worth checking out. Not only for the challenge, but for the great level design and its wacky and stressing scenarios. Apparently this was supposed to get a home console port, and it's a shame it never did. This is the horniest racing game I've ever played. It's also kinda bad. First off, the handling. If you've ever played a later Ridge Racer game, you might remember the on-rails nature of the handling. Valve Limit R is of the same style, but it's worse in every single conceivable way. It works in Ridge Racer because the tracks are long and flowing. It doesn't work when you have square turns and the brakes are a suggestion to the car, which means you'll be having a fair few collisions, and it's very easy to get stuck on geometry without a reverse gear. But what's even worse is the fact that the car refuses to go straight. There are some games with some pretty shit handling out there, but this is another level. But it does bring some unique ideas to the table, such as a qualifying drag race before the championship, which allows you to secure a starting position. And it's one of the few games to truly recreate the experience of using nitrous as depicted in Fast and Furious. But you'll hardly be able to appreciate this because your passengers never shut up. They are constantly blocking apexes, obstacles, and shortcuts. Like, get off of my screen, I'm trying to drive. Also, this game is just obviously sexist. Like, why are the women barely wearing anything, but the men aren't wrapped up in gold chains with a skull around their boy cock?
Let's get this over with.
I want equality, damn it. There's nothing here that makes this game worth playing. I actually intended to compare this to Outrun, but I never got to boot. But spending hours trying to troubleshoot it was a better use of my time than playing this. It is literally unplayable.
Welcome to the exciting comic world!
Cell shading never ages. Wild Riders looks fantastic and plays even better. There's 4 controls: accelerate, brake, jump, and slide. It's simple on paper, but takes some practice to get a perfect run. The game has you in the city-wide cop chase, which takes you through buildings, rooftops, and forests. The further you progress, the harder the chase becomes, with you having to maintain a higher speed to keep the cops off of your tail. And this is a challenge, because hitting cars while completely flatlining them slows you down, and getting your speed back isn't instantaneous. And these cars, especially the cop cars, are going to be driving straight towards you. So you're always trying to keep your speed up, avoiding cars, but also minimizing swerving, which shaves off your speed. You're going to be going through some trial and error, memorize where the cars go, and trying to find that perfect route. The game only provides you with one long stage, but there are alternate routes, with the better you do, getting you cooler scenery and less obstacles. You're rewarded for your performance, but one mistake has you kicked back down with the cretins. It's not too dissimilar from a 2D Sonic game in that regard. And of course, you've already been seeing it, but the presentation, the picture-in-picture scenes, NPC reactions all just accentuate the experience. My playthrough was marred by emulation slowdown, but the game is just so responsive and engaging that despite that, it really didn't drag down the experience for me. It's a wild adrenaline rush that's worth experiencing, even just once, trying to get that perfect run, or just challenging yourself and trying to get through all the chaos on the ground. Arcades were able to provide experiences that only made sense in that format. If a game came to consoles, they were bundled with extra modes and content to justify a retail price. This obviously would have cost money on top of the porting costs, which in some cases was literally rebuilding the entire game, as arcades often had hardware more powerful than what was available in the home. ECA may look like a Dreamcast game, but the hardware difference between the Dreamcast and the Naomi board is immense. And due to the unique nature of these arcade boards, emulating these games today takes a bit more effort than your typical console, whether you run into visual, performance, audio bugs, or the game just not wanting to work at all. These issues make these games harder to play from a technical standpoint, but also from an enjoyment standpoint, which really is a shame, because there are fun, well-designed, challenging, and rewarding experiences to be found within these games, and they really shouldn't be relegated to sparse Wikipedia pages. Like any genre and franchise, not all of these games are good, but even bad games can have some good ideas to help inspire future titles. Arcade games were all competing for your attention and time, not too dissimilar from current live service games, and how they're literally designed to siphon money from you. But unlike live service titles, which are a platform first and a game second, these were games first and foremost, and it's well worth the upfront effort to dive in and enjoy them.